Hello and welcome back to the channel. It is Mark from Powersonic and Apprentice 121. Today we are going to be installing a Nuaire Positive Input Ventilation Unit, PIV for short. I'll spin you around now and show you what's in the box, and then we're going to jump straight to site and get on with installing one of these. I'm going to take you right through it from the start to the end. And here's what you get in your old box. So you got the PIV itself, and I'll show you that unboxed and out on the job. But essentially it comes with a little power adapter, and around this way you can see that. So it's taking the 230 in and it's putting out 24 volts DC at 1 amp to drive this PIV, and that drives the heater module that we'll talk about as well, and also the controls on the faceplate. I'll show you all that on site, but this is as it comes in the box. So if you need to get it through your loft hatch, these go through even the smallest loft spaces. So if you've got those old houses where they've got a loft hatch that you can just about fit a large fat man through, these will go through as well. Then we've got the insulated duct. I'll show you that as well out on site, but it is insulated in the sense, so you can see it's got the foil in there too, so it's going to prevent any of the old condensation or as much as possible. The heater module lives inside this box here. We'll have a look at that as well. It essentially has got a 400 watt heating element that pulses on and off, and that's kind of tied in to the power pack from here. And then the front module, which is in this box there, and that sits in the ceiling. And you can adjust the temperature coming out of this. It basically switches it on from a colder loft temperature for a longer period of time, so it'll run more often and increase the ambient air coming out of the loft into the house by about 8 to 10 degrees Celsius, they reckon. So it's not going to start pumping in hot air. That's not how it works, but it will take the edge off the cold air in your loft space in the winter months. And if you're going to get one of these, highly recommend you get them with the heater module. So we'll jump to site now. We'll go and get on with fitting this. I'll talk through what we're doing along the way. You can see all these component parts as we're installing them. Hopefully it comes together nicely. And again, this is an attempt to solve condensation and mould issues. So if you've got a property where you're seeing condensation on your windows to an excessive volume, or if you've got mould patches in the corner of your rooms, you need to be mindful of all of the basics first, which is sort of trickle vents in your windows, extractor fans in your bathrooms and kitchens, that you've got insulation in the loft and your cavities, hopefully, to try and stop any cold spots on the building. And if you've exhausted all of those options and you're still finding an issue, or you want to improve on the air quality in your home anyway, if you've got someone with asthma, for example, these are a fantastic product to install. I have one in my home, mainly because my daughter has asthma, and it was something that we were told would help, and it has done. So it's been in for a number of years in my house. We've seen the condensation disappear, and also the air quality in our home improve drastically. And I know that is the case from the measurements I've taken at home to do with the humidity levels, and also some of the problems that you might find in your home to do with dust mites and other allergens. You know, you can monitor all these things and you know that you're going to see an improvement or not from doing so. So I've got extra confidence in marketing these products to my customers and going off and installing them. We do a lot of these every autumn and winter. As soon as we get round to that time of year where the lights, the clocks are brought back, you know, the phone starts ringing for these PIV installs. And this is another one. Let's get straight out to site. I'll try and talk through some of the bits and pieces as best I can while I'm voicing over the content, and hope you enjoy it. Okay, so here we are out on site, and again, this is the stuff in the box. You'll see there we've got the heating tube, so that's got the little element inside it that sits in the loft space. We've got the grill plate here, which goes in the ceiling, and this is where the cardboard template lives for giving you the cutout to mark around on the ceiling. See, I've got the guys there just sheeting up, so we get some sheets down on the carpet and then put some dust sheets and a final covering on top that you'll see us with down there below. That nice old pink curtain, we've had that for ages, just sticks around, but that's on top of a dust sheet and that plastic sheet. You can see Nathan cutting out this board here because this is where we're going to mount the PIV. We've got existing cables all over this loft space that aren't in the best of condition. We'll speak a little bit about that later on. You can see there we've got an open junction box which was energized. So yeah, we've just been careful. We've moved the alarm cables out the way that were just running across there. This is the loft space, and obviously we've checked this. There's good ventilation into all the soffits. Obviously the customer's got plans to do some quite extensive insulation. So we've had to make them aware of not blocking up all of the ventilation coming into the loft, because the PIV is relying on that to make sure it can inject that fresh, unhumid air into the property. So we are happy with that. It is a well ventilated loft space, and there's no signs of any rots, leaks or anything like that that's going on. So that's one of the important aspects of the PIV, that you do check out the loft space and make sure it's suitable. You'll see it's kind of boxed off that way. There's no access to that other end of the loft. It is still part of the same property, and they believe that that space was kind of made as a temporary room by the prior owners. They've just kind of sealed that off, and it is left as is. So we're having to put the PIV in this particular ceiling space. It's the only spot we had to go at, which I will talk about a little bit at the end of the video when we go through the instructions. So you can see Nathan there, he's all gloved up with his mask and his goggles and his ear defenders, cutting this out in a bit of a neater way than the people who attempted to install that spotlight. So we've given ourselves a nice clear spot of access to install the PIV within the loft space. So you can see he's just slowly cutting his way through there. And obviously I've killed the audio on this because it is a very noisy oscillating saw. This is Matthew just marking up the ceiling space below. That's the cardboard template that comes in the kit. As long as you mark this out carefully and get it in the centre of the ceiling space, you really can't go wrong, as long as you cut that marking along your lines. There is a bit of play in there, so you don't need to be especially precious with it, but you know, generally if you stick to the lines, you're not going to go wrong. So you see, this is me recording from the top surface while Matthew is cutting this out. Now you can, if you want, do it with a pad saw, or you can do it with a multi-tool, as Matthew is here. And the reason he's opted for that is the ceilings had been recently re-skimmed, and he was a little bit concerned about the plaster blowing whilst cutting at it with the jab saw. So he's been a bit more careful, got a fine-tooth blade on this. Obviously you're not going to be using that for cutting timbers once you've been through some plasterboard and plaster with it. But you know, it makes a nice neat cut on the underside, and you're not risking damaging the plastered ceiling, because that's one of the worst things you can do when you're doing what you're intending to do, is cause damage somewhere else and having to patch it up and make good in places you would rather not. You can see there we're quite close to that spotlight. As I said, it really is a small ceiling space. It's a bungalow. There's nowhere else we could really go with this, so we're having to make the best of it. There's no minimum requirement to keep it away from the light. I'll speak a little bit in the instructions about the distances from smoke alarms and from your walls. We'll go through that when I go through the instruction manual, but generally if you are running at speeds 2 or 3, you need to be around 400 mil from the wall, which we was here, and if not, you've got the air dams as well. But again, I'll speak about that a bit later on when we go through the manual. So you can see he's nearly got his way cut through there. He's just been careful and ginger to try and make sure we're not causing ourselves any problems. You know, it might take an extra minute or two in cutting your hole, but from doing so you can save yourself an extra half hour to an hour of patching up. So he's got that cut through there. I think I'm just going to reach in and grab this cutout. I always put these to one side and tell the customer where they are, just in case they ever decide they don't want a PIV anymore and someone has to come and patch the ceiling up. The cutout is there for them to use. Now this is a timber frame we put around the PIVs. You will have noticed that just down there. I'll speak a bit about that in a minute as well. This is Nathan getting the fuse connection unit wired up, and this comes in the kit, so it comes with a 3 amp fuse. Matthew's getting involved in that as well. Now he's making the connection into our feed to the fan. We also need to make sure we get that 2-pole 3mm of contact separation on all poles as well, and I will reference that in a bit. But here close to the fan, we're just putting the fuse connection unit, which has got our feed down to supply the fan, and then we've got the flex lead wired into that. So you can see our wooden frame there around the fan. That's to give it some support in the ceiling. You know, it's not very heavy, there's not a lot of weight there, but still we'd rather get as much as we can to fix the grill plate too from below, and also provide a bit of support to the heating element that's sat on top of it. You see the fan itself is mounted on a cord. We've got that secured across a timber we've installed between the 2 rafters running up to the top. You know, you can use existing timbers or just put hooks in if you wish, but we've tried to be a bit more substantial with that. So we've got it wrapped around the timber, and we've also installed a fall arrest screw in the top, which the hook's gone around. So if that timber was to ever fail due to rot or whatever, it's not going to drop away onto the floor. You know, it's going to be held nice and securely up there. We've also got the ducting, and again, you need to cut this to length, make sure it's reasonably taut without being too tight. You know, there is a fine line and balance with that, and again, secure it so it's got a nice bend on it and it's not constricted in any way, so the good flow of air can make its way through it. And again, you can see there we've popped some insulation around the vent plate just to try and make sure there's no drafts or anything coming through the ceiling and then around it. Made good that junction box, and we've tidied up some of the other wiring in the loft as well. But you can see here we've got the vent plate in the ceiling now. These are the speed controls. You can see me adjusting it up, and I'll just go quiet here to see if you can hear it. So I know you can't really hear anything on there, but you know, essentially it is really quiet anyway. We tend to leave them on speed 3 generally. This is only a 2-bed bungalow, so we've popped it on speed 3. You can see Matthew's popped the air dam in there just to keep it away from blowing at that light. Really, it's to stop dust and debris or anything getting into that spotlight. This is the Lucien consumer unit someone else has installed. We haven't done this, and again, with the consideration of the existing wiring, we're coming back to this board with our cable to power the new PIV, and we're going to put a local 2-pole isolator in that circuit so the customer has the contact separation required as dictated by the instructions, and a new circuit off this board. So I'm back at the office now, having gone through that install with you out on site. I want to have a little look at the instruction manual just to go through some of the bits and pieces in a little bit more detail. I've saved this to the end because I know it's not for everybody. You just want to see the work and not the bump behind it. Let's have a little look. If I just spin you around. And it starts off with the safety information. So you're looking at your electrical supply, connection to the unit must be made by a qualified electrician. So if you are considering doing this as a DIY install, you will still need to consult an electrician when you come to make that connection. It's telling you to make sure you isolate any power, all the basics, that you need 3mm contact separation in accordance with the latest wiring regulations as a form of isolation on these installs, so you must always make sure you've got that. You know, some people will happily call the main switch to the entire property as having provided that, but really some form of local all-pole disconnection is never a bad idea. This unit must be earthed. The ducting must be securely fixed with screws to the spigot to prevent access to live parts, so that's clearly stated there. And the duct runs terminating close to the fan must be adequately protected by suitable guards. So you know, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to these, that somebody can't go getting the fingers inside any of the bitey bits. So checking that the supply cord's in good order. There's no backflow from any open flue gas appliances, so if you're in a loft space with a boiler, it's well worth considering the inclusion of a CO detector in the system for that purpose. But make sure that the basics are there and you've checked the condition of the boiler itself. You know, if it's of an age where you've got concerns about it, make sure you're having that checked out. Ask to see the service record for the appliance as well. Saying don't let kids use it. The fan's supplied with a fuse spare, so you get that spare in the product itself, but remember about your all-pole isolation. You also get the cable, which we've shown you in the video as well. Explains about the CO sensor and also about smoke alarms, and that's the important one. So don't put these within a metre of a smoke alarm for obvious reasons. You know, they want to be picking up smoke that might be accumulating in the room ceiling space and not have that dispersed away from it. Equally, that you're not kind of blowing dust potentially all over the sensor from the PIV itself and rendering it useless. So make sure you do pay attention to that. You know, sometimes it's tricky if you've got a small loft space, a small ceiling space to mount it on. And again, here looking through it, I'm not going to read through all of this, but it's basically all of your important information. It's giving you about PPE, so it's quite detailed there if you want to read through and follow this. It says here, a temperature sensor shall be fitted to the outlet of the heater and will control the output of the heater in an attempt to maintain the set point. The set point can be adjusted between 5C and 15C. It also has the ability to be controlled using an RF function, so you can get remote control switches for these that you can put in the hall and adjust all of these settings without needing to access the front plate. You can see there it does say it is a 400 watt heating element. And it's electronically controlled so as to minimise its energy use. It's not just running at that 400 watts continuously. So that's stated on there. It tells you about the mechanical installation, so how you should avoid the backflow of gases again. You know, you've got to check the loft. You know, there's sometimes if a loft is so well sealed, you might need some additional ventilation, you know, to get that airflow through the loft. Ensure that your water tank's covered and sealed. Check all water pipes are lagged. Ensure that your extract fans are discharging to outside, because again, if somebody's just put a bathroom fan straight into the loft space, as is reasonably common, you're just going to start blowing all that moist air back into the house and achieve absolutely nothing. You need a good seal on your loft hatch, so make sure you've got that. All holes in the ceilings are sealed, so if you've got your spotlights, make sure they've got the little foam bungs on the back face of the spots themselves, or that the holes are cut nicely around the light fittings and it hasn't been done by somebody's teeth. So yeah, it's just checking the basics really. Make sure you have a good sound seal between the loft space and the house, and also that you've got good airflow in there. Now the diffuser has a unique air throw pattern, they call it. It's essential that it's located in the central hallway in a single storey property, or the ceiling on the top floor landing on 2 or more storey dwellings. You can get these products for more stories. They have a specific version of this. I think it goes up to 5 stories, so you can get those as well, but this particular model is just for up to 2-storey houses. The diffuser discharges air evenly in all directions, so it's important to get it positioned as best you can. Obviously some ceiling spaces, they are the size that they are, and you can use the air dams to try and direct the flow of air in a more sensible manner, but ultimately as long as it's blowing it into that ceiling space, it will naturally work its way through the property. So it's saying here, if you need to put a smoke alarm within a metre because you have got that problem on the ceiling space, and really we would never do this, but it does say you can use the air dams to try and deflect the air away from the smoke alarm. Wouldn't recommend that. It says here about the speed settings and your distance from the wall, and again you're going to be restricted sometimes by the ceiling spaces that are available to you, but generally if you're on speed 3, which is most common, I would say you need 400 mil to the wall if possible, and if not, you can use the air dams to try and deflect the air in a different direction should you wish. And again, really that's just to avoid blowing dust and debris at the same spot of a wall in a continuous duration. You imagine that air circulating, you might start to see staining and such. So that's what that's about. And again, you've got explaining how to fit the ceiling diffuser to the ceiling, and there's a diagram there about the air dams which kind of shows you how that can block off the flow of air. And you get a template, as we showed, to mark the ceiling out, which makes it easy to install. Explains about the heater, that it has to be electrically connected to the ceiling vent and fan using the 3 looms. So there's the 3 looms that I've showed you on the video and how they install and link between all of these products. And the flexible ducts, make sure you're pulling it reasonably taut. You don't want it like super tight so it's moving the position of the equipment as it's suspended from the ceiling, but it wants to be tight so it's not restricting the flow of air. And then the filters themselves just clip on the side. Just trying to be as thorough as we can here, and again it shows you the internal of the fan there, so you can see how the filters fit onto that. Says about the standard method is to suspend it from a convenient roof beam with the cord supplied. It only weighs 3.5 kilograms, so it's not particularly heavy, and the method of locating the cord to the roof timber is the responsibility of the installer. So again, if you've got some especially flimsy timbers, you might want to think twice about that. The duct's 2 meters long at its maximum, so you have to drop that over and attach it on with the cable ties, and don't forget your screws on the heating element if you've used a heat model, because you will need to have that access by means of a tool because of the prongs on the heating element. If you are going to mount it in this manner, so across timbers, you can do that. You just need the anti-vibration mounts, and that's really, as this is running, it does create a small level of vibration. So if you use the mounts, it stops that being a noise nuisance to the occupants of the property. So again, you'd use a couple of battens and make sure that you're doing that. The electrical installation, again, it goes on to talk about using a suitably qualified person and how to go about considering that. You know, in avoidance of automatically resetting the thermal cutout, this appliance must not be supplied through an external switching device, such as a timer, or connected to a circuit that is regularly switched on and off by the utility. So that's something to keep in mind. If the thermal cutout operates on the heating element, it is reset by powering the unit off and on again. So if that's likely to be something that's done without intention, you need to be mindful of that. And again, just telling you about the loading on it. So your consumption is 1.6 watt minimum, 15.3 watts maximum, and up to 422 watts with the heater at full load. But remember, that is just a pulsed heater. It's not constantly drawing that current even when it is in use. And you've got your fuse size at 3 amps. So there it'll show you the wiring diagram. So you've got your fuse spare that they supply in the kit. You need your 2-pole isolator as well in circuit. You can put that after the spare or before. You could even include it into it if you wanted to swap out that 3 amp spare that comes with the kit. You know, you've got the whole range of options there, and however you wish to achieve that electrically is up to you. But do make sure you've got that provision to make sure you're keeping safe. And it'll actually say there, look, 2-pole isolator installed by others. So that's good. And then it talks about the smoke alarm and how you would wire that in. Sorry, see smoke alarm for if you're wanting to shut the fan down in the event of some carbon monoxide being detected. And the speed selections. So again, generally, I find speed 3 is the most likely speed you're going to be using. But on some bigger properties, you might want to use a higher speed. And if you're trying to clear out an especially bad case of condensation, you might want to set it a bit higher as well. And the temperature, it says here, and again it explains between the 5 and 15 degrees for your minimum and maximum commissioning pot located on the ceiling vent diffuser. If the temperature at the heater outlet sensor is above the set point, the heater will not activate. So you're just kind of adjusting the duration it might be on for. And again, it tells you how to adjust the temperature. There's the QR code on there, that's on the front. So if you're a user of these, you can scan that and it will take you to all of these instructions. These are some of the ancillaries you can get. So we were talking about the wall plates, and these are wirelessly linked to the product. They don't need hard wiring, but it's how you can turn the heater on and off, or have it on auto, or boost it if someone's had a shower and there's a large volume of steam that you're trying to clear more quickly, or you've been cooking or whatever. You know, you can have these controls fitted as well. Generally, they work perfectly just on their own, looking after themselves, but some people like that. And again, you've got your boost sensor that you would need for that. So there are some additional products you're going to have to install if you want to go for this kind of control. And it talks a little bit about those within the instructions there. That's kind of it. There's the warranty. So as long as you use approved installers, you get a 7-year warranty. The maintenance that you have to do, so it's saying all electrical terminals within the unit should be tightened annually, and check all your earth connections. So it is calling on a bit of maintenance there from an electrical point of view. And the filters, it says, would need to be changed every 5 years or so, and it displays a C on the control module when that time has elapsed. And then you've got your frequently asked questions, which means what some of the fault codes might mean, or if it's not running, and your end of life recycling instructions. So it is quite a detailed instruction, which is really good. I think it's important that manufacturers do make clear how these things should be installed, what you're trying to achieve through the course of the installation, and also that, you know, your ongoing technical support in terms of using it is there for your customers. And the fact they offer a 7-year warranty on this product is a pretty strong indication that they're quite confident in the quality. And we've been approved installers of these products now for it's over 7 years, and I don't think we've hardly had a callback to a single one, is the truthful answer. I guess they're quite basic in the way they work. Some of the earlier models, the PCB boards that mounted into the grill that pushes up to the ceiling, they didn't have a cover on, and they tended to collect dust, and they would occasionally cause a bit of a problem where it upset some of the electronics. But now they have a plate on there which stops that from happening. I think we did have a callback ages and ages ago, which was due to dust settling on that PCB board. But yeah, loads of these have gone in, not had an issue, really good quality. I hope you found this video useful. We've tried to make sure we follow the intent of these manufacturers' instructions, and that the customer has now got high quality home ventilation system that is going to help them get rid of any condensation forming. And time will tell on that. It takes a couple of weeks or so. We usually advise to start drying out all of the plaster work. Obviously you should see an improvement in the condensation that might be forming in your windows, and the humidity levels should drop reasonably quickly after the PIV's been installed. but to get all of that moisture out of the building that's been soaking into plaster and such can take a bit of time. So give it a couple of weeks, make sure that that process has happened, and then start cleaning up and removing any of the mould, because remember, mould is ingrained into the fabric of the building, and usually the only way to get rid of it is to remove it, replaster, and then decorate. You can get products that will treat it, but that's hit and miss as if it works or not. So our recommendation is to always remove the affected areas and then replaster, redecorate, and it shouldn't reform. Thank you very much for watching this video. Get involved in the comments if you have any questions, you want to know how these work or come together, any of the electrical issues that you think might be in the installs, you want to ask about those, feel free. As always, I'm here for the discussion. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.